You've always been so unambitious, Scarlett. My dad said, his voice cutting through the chatter at the dinner table. Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues, and that's fine. But leave the real work to people like your brother. I set my fork down carefully, my hands trembling under the table. And yet somehow, except for you, Dad, my unambitious self is the only other person at this table with a track record of success. I said, evenly meeting his eyes. My brother smirked the same infuriating, dismissive grin I'd seen my entire life. My name is Scarlett Greer. I'm 32 now. But when all of this began, I was just the overlooked middle child in a family where success was measured by flash and status. My dad, Richard Greer, built one of the most successful real estate empires in Chicago. My older brother Benjamin was his golden boy, the heir apparent to the business, despite his carelessness. My younger sister, Olivia, was the family darling, more interested in brunch and brand deals than anything resembling responsibility. Quiet, dependable, and in my family's eyes, forgettable. That was me. The dinner dissolved into a flurry of conversation from which I was excluded. Benjamin bragged about a new property deal he claimed to have closed. Despite rumors at the last company event that the deal was deeply flawed, my dad glowed, directing questions at Benjamin to keep him in the spotlight. Olivia chimed in here and there, sprinkling in anecdotes about her latest social escapades. Meanwhile, I sat quietly pushing food around my plate, wondering why I still subjected myself to these dinners. When I was younger, I used to try to keep up to impress them. I graduated near the top of my class and took on every internship I could find, thinking if I worked hard enough, they'd finally see me. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. You're too quiet. My dad would say, you don't have the killer instinct for this business. It didn't matter that I outperformed my peers, or that I had ideas to bring the company forward. They'd already made up their minds about me. The tipping point came a few years ago. Not that my family noticed. I'd been sitting in one of the company's weekly strategy meetings, a formality where my dad and Benjamin made all the decisions while the rest of us watched that day. I had a proposal, a detailed plan to turn a struggling property into a profitable residential complex. I'd spent weeks researching, running the numbers, and crafting a pitch I thought even my dad couldn't ignore when it was finally my turn to speak. I barely got 2 sentences in before Benjamin interrupted. That location's a lost cause. He said dismissively, we've already sunk too much into it. Let's move on. I've actually found a way I started, but my dad cut me off with a wave of his hand. If Benjamin says it's not worth it, then it's not worth it. Next item. I remember sitting there, my face burning, my carefully crafted plan, forgotten as they moved on, like I wasn't even in the room that night. I made a decision. If they didn't want to listen to me in their company, I'd build my own. I didn't quit the family company outright. That would have drawn too much attention. Instead, I started small, working on my own projects, quietly in the background. A rundown. Duplex on the outskirts of town became my first investment. It was all I could afford with the little I'd saved, but I saw the potential no one else did. I spent weekends painting walls, replacing fixtures, and learning the ins and outs of property management. When I sold it a year later, the profit was modest, but it was mine, and that was just the beginning. Over the next few years, I scouted undervalued properties across Chicago, partnering with Sophia Tran, a savvy real estate investor I'd met through a mutual friend. Sophia was everything I needed in a business partner. Smart, experienced, and just as determined to prove people wrong together. We built something remarkable, one property at a time. By the time I was 30, my portfolio was thriving. What started as a side hustle had grown into a legitimate business with properties spanning residential complexes, boutique office spaces, and even a few prime retail locations. Sophia and I ran everything under a company name. No one in my family would recognize Tran & Partners. I wasn't just building wealth, I was building a reputation, quietly, steadily. I had become one of my father's fiercest competitors. The irony, my family had no idea while they were busy managing their sprawling, mismanaged empire, I was buying up properties they'd written off as unprofitable and turning them into successes. Each deal felt like a private victory, a small step toward proving to myself that I was more than the shadow they'd cast me in one evening as I sat poring over financial reports. Sophia walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. You've been at it all day, she said, placing 1 cup in front of me. Take a break, Scarlett. Even machines need to recharge. I smiled. Taking a sip. I can't help it. Every time I see how well the numbers are trending, I think about the next move. There's this office building near the Loop. I've been eyeing. Sophia raised an eyebrow as she settled into the chair across from me. Let me guess. It's undervalued, ignored by every major player, but you've already figured out how to turn it into a gold mine. Pretty much, I admitted with a grin. It's exactly the kind of property my dad and Benjamin would laugh off, which makes it perfect. Sophia leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. Speaking of them, don't you think it's only a matter of time before they figure out who's behind Tran and Partners? Maybe I said shrugging, but by the time they do, it won't matter. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. And besides, I hesitated, swirling the coffee in my cup. Part of me doesn't even care if they find out anymore. They've already dismissed me my whole life. I've learned to live without their approval. Sophia tilted her head, studying me. You're not doing this for their approval, Scarlett. You're doing it for you. And if they ever do figure it out, well, let's just say I wouldn't mind being a fly on the wall when that happens. I chuckled, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. You're right. I said I'm doing this for me. Whether they find out or not, it doesn't change the fact that we've built something incredible. Sophia raised her coffee cup in a mock toast to building something incredible. I clinked my cup against hers, a renewed sense of determination burning in my chest to building something incredible at every family gathering. My dad and Benjamin never missed an opportunity to remind me of my so-called uselessness, Scarlett. When's the last time you even stepped foot in the office? My dad would sneer, shaking his head as if my very presence was an insult. You know, for someone with shares in the company, you sure do a great job of making yourself invisible. Benjamin, always eager to pile on, would chuckle and add, not that anyone notices, of course. It's not like the company's missing out on your valuable contributions. They thought they were clever, mocking me for stepping back. Unaware of the real reason, I distanced myself. I had stopped going to the office regularly the moment I started working with Sophia. At first it was because I needed the time to focus on our projects. Later it became a matter of self-preservation. Every visit was a reminder that in their eyes I was an afterthought, someone who didn't matter enough to be included or even taken seriously. I showed up only when absolutely necessary, attending shareholder meetings out of obligation and slipping out as soon as I could to them. My absence was just more proof of my irrelevance. To me, it was a chance to build something far greater than they could ever imagine. From the beginning, Sophia had been the face of Tran and Partners. It was a strategic decision we made together. She was the one who handled the public engagements, the media interviews, and the high-profile negotiations. I preferred to stay behind the scenes, focusing on the strategy, analytics, and decision-making that drove our success. It wasn't that I was hiding. I just knew my strengths, and Sophia's confidence and charisma were unmatched when it came to dealing with people. It worked perfectly to the outside world. Tran and Partners was Sophia's brainchild, a fast-growing real estate firm led by a savvy, ambitious woman, a sharp eye for undervalued properties. Investors admired her, competitors envied her, and the press couldn't get enough of her story. No one knew about the woman behind the curtain, the strategist pulling the strings and quietly steering the company's direction. Only a handful of trusted partners were aware that I was the architect behind the scenes, designing every move with meticulous precision. This anonymity was by design. It gave me the freedom to operate without scrutiny, especially from my family. My name wasn't on the website, my photo wasn't in the annual reports, and no one in the industry connected me to Tran and Partners. Even if someone had looked into our operations, they wouldn't have found my fingerprints on anything to everyone outside of our tight circle. Scarlett Greer was nothing more than a shareholder in her family's real estate empire, a name on paper with no active role in either company. That's exactly how I wanted it. Not even my father or Benjamin suspected that Tran and Partners had anything to do with me. To them, it was just another small competitor nipping at the edges of the market. They'd never think to look closer, never imagine that the company slowly outpacing them in certain areas was led by someone they'd dismissed as irrelevant. The irony wasn't just satisfying. It was my greatest weapon. I knew this balance couldn't last forever. The bigger we grew, the more attention we'd attract. And one day, whether I was ready for it or not, my two worlds would collide. The industry gala was the kind of event my dad and Benjamin thrived on. It was all about networking, rubbing shoulders with the who's who of real estate, and reminding everyone why Greer Enterprises was considered a powerhouse. I wasn't planning on going, it wasn't really my scene. Sophia insisted. "Come on, Scarlett," she said as she tossed an elegant black dress onto my couch. "You've earned a night to celebrate. Besides, it'll be fun to watch everyone squirm when they realize how far Tran and Partners has come." I reluctantly agreed, knowing my presence would likely go unnoticed. My dad and Benjamin were sure to be there, but they'd written me off so thoroughly that I'd be just another face in the crowd, and I was fine with that. At least that's what I told myself. The ballroom was breathtaking. The kind of opulence that screamed old money, chandeliers, sparkled, overhead waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne, and the city's most powerful figures gathered in clusters, exchanging polite laughter and business cards. As soon as I spotted my dad and Benjamin, I knew the night was about to become an exercise in patience. "Well, well," Benjamin said, smirking as I approached their table. "Look who decided to show up. You know, Scarlett, these events are usually for people who actually contribute to the industry. Be nice." My dad muttered, though his tone wasn't much kinder. He barely glanced at me as he adjusted his tie. "Just try not to embarrass us." I swallowed the retort, bubbling in my throat, and found a seat at a table near the back where Sophia and a few of our closest colleagues were waiting. My dad and brother couldn't see me from there. "How's it going over there?" Sophia whispered, nodding toward my family, exactly as expected. I replied, "Let's just get through tonight." As the evening progressed, award after award was handed out, and Greer Enterprises didn't take home a single one. My dad's expression grew darker with every passing announcement, and Benjamin's usual bravado dimmed. I could see the frustration building between them, but I stayed out of it, content to watch from the sidelines. Then it happened, and the final award of the night, the host announced, goes to the firm that has shown unparalleled innovation and excellence in the real estate sector. This year's winner is Tran and Partners. My heart skipped a beat as applause erupted around the room. Sophia rose from her seat, beaming as she made her way to the stage. My dad and Benjamin exchanged confused glances, clearly wondering how a smaller firm like Tran and Partners had managed to overshadow them. Sophia accepted the award gracefully, her poise and charisma commanding the room as she took the microphone. "Thank you." She began, her voice warm and steady. "This recognition means so much to Tran and Partners and to everyone who has contributed to our journey. When we started this company, we had a vision to find value where others saw none, to innovate where others played it safe, and to build not just properties but opportunities. And tonight, being here among so many talented people, this award feels like validation of that vision." Applause rippled through the crowd, polite and appreciative, but Sophia wasn't finished. She adjusted the microphone and took a small step forward, her expression softening into something more personal, but she continued, her voice taking on a deeper resonance. "This moment isn't just about me or even our team as a whole. It's about someone who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Someone whose brilliance and determination have been the driving force behind Tran and Partners. I'm standing here tonight because of her vision, her strategic mind, and her unwavering commitment to excellence." I froze, my stomach tightening. Sophia's eyes swept the room, finally landing on me with a small, knowing smile. Many of you may not know her name, and that's exactly how she prefers it. She shuns the spotlight, yet without her, Tran and Partners wouldn't be the company it is today. The mastermind behind every deal we've closed, every risk we've taken, and every success we've earned is my partner and closest confidant, Scarlett Greer. The room fell into stunned silence, and then the murmurs began. Heads turned in my direction, whispers growing louder as recognition spread like wildfire. My dad and Benjamin sat frozen at their table, their expressions a mix of confusion, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite place. Humiliation, perhaps. My dad's jaw tightened while Benjamin's smirk was wiped clean off his face. Sophia wasn't done. "Scarlett's the kind of leader who doesn't need to shout to be heard," she continued. "She lets her work speak for itself. She's the one who sees possibilities, where others see failure, who takes risks others are too afraid to take, and who fights for what she believes in, no matter how many doubters she faces. Her brilliance has not only transformed this company, but has set a new standard for what real estate innovation looks like, and I think it's time the world knows it." Her words hit me like a wave, each one breaking down the walls I'd built to protect myself from the doubt and dismissal I'd endured for years. The murmurs in the room grew louder, but so did the applause. My colleagues at the Tran and Partners table were on their feet clapping and cheering. Sophia turned toward me, her hand outstretched. Scarlett, come join me. This moment is yours as much as it is mine. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart pounded in my chest, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. Then I saw Sophia's encouraging smile. The warmth in her eyes and the applause of the room began to register. Slowly, I stood, my knees shaky, but my resolve strengthening with every step I took toward the stage. As I climbed the stairs and stepped into the spotlight, I could feel every pair of eyes on me. My father's, my brother's, and the room full of industry leaders who had no idea I'd been shaping this industry from the shadows. I reached Sophia's side, and she handed me the award, her hand resting on my shoulder as she leaned into the microphone one last time. This is Scarlett Greer, Sophia said, her voice filled with pride, and if you haven't heard of her yet, trust me, you will. Standing there on stage with the weight of the award in my hands and the applause thundering around me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. A sense of validation, not from the crowd, but from myself. My eyes scanned the room briefly, landing on my father and Benjamin. Their stunned expressions were priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and a flicker of something that might have been respect. Sophia leaned toward me, her voice low and steady. Say something, she whispered, her hand giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I stepped up to the microphone, my heart pounding. I wasn't one for speeches, but this wasn't about grandeur. It was about being seen. I took a deep breath and spoke. Thank you. I began, my voice clear, despite the lump in my throat. This is unexpected, but deeply meaningful. When Sophia and I started Tran and Partners, we knew we were taking a chance on properties. Others dismissed on ideas. Others ignored. On ourselves tonight is proof that those risks were worth it. The crowd clapped politely, but I wasn't done to everyone who believed in us. Thank you. And to those who didn't. Well, I allowed myself a small sly smile. Thank you for underestimating us. It gave us the fuel to succeed. The laughter and applause that followed buoyed me, but my focus was elsewhere, on my father's expression, which had shifted from stunned to something unreadable. Benjamin, whose jaw was clenched so tightly I thought he might crack a tooth. I stepped back from the microphone, Sophia beaming beside me as the applause finally died down and we exited the stage. She turned to me, now that she said with a grin, was a moment worth savoring. As we returned to our table, I could feel the ripple of whispers following us, the weight of the room's attention still lingering. Sophia leaned over, her voice low but amused. I'd pay good money to know what's going through your dad's head right now. I glanced toward their table. My father sat stiffly, his hands clasped on the table in front of him, staring straight ahead. Benjamin looked like he was ready to explode. His face flushed as he whispered, something heated, to my dad. Olivia? Ever? The oblivious one sipped her wine, her eyes darting between the two of them, as if trying to gauge whether the tension was worth interrupting her evening. They'll come around. Sophia said, as if reading my thoughts, maybe not tonight, maybe not ever in the way you deserve, but they'll have no choice but to recognize what you've built. Maybe, I replied, though I wasn't sure I cared anymore for once. Their acknowledgement wasn't the goal. It was the byproduct of proving to myself that I could thrive without their approval. As the event wound down, I couldn't avoid them any longer. My dad approached our table. Benjamin, trailing a few steps behind Sophia, ever poised, stood as he arrived, extending her hand with a gracious smile. Mr. Greer, she said warmly. It's an honor to meet you. He shook her hand, stiffly, his usual confidence. Absent. Likewise, he replied, his voice strained. His eyes flicked to me, a mixture of pride and discomfort flickering in his expression. Scarlett, we need to talk. Benjamin snorted, crossing his arms. Talk? What's there to talk about? You've clearly been busy undermining the family business behind our backs. Sophia's smile didn't waver, but her tone hardened just enough to send a chill through the air. Undermining. I'd say Scarlett's been doing what you should have been doing, innovating and succeeding, but I suppose we can leave that discussion for another time. Benjamin's face turned a deeper shade of red, but my dad held up a hand to silence him enough. He said sharply. He turned back to me. Scarlett, can we step outside for a moment? Just the two of us. I followed my dad out onto the terrace. The cool night air, a welcome relief from the intensity of the ballroom. The city lights stretched out before us, glittering against the dark sky. He stood silently for a moment, his hands resting on the railing, his shoulders unusually tense. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't know," he said quietly, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place regret. "Maybe. I had no idea you were capable of all this." I crossed my arms, leaning against the railing beside him. "That's because you never cared to find out." I replied, my tone even, but firm. "You and Benjamin were so busy dismissing me that you didn't bother to see what I was doing. You wrote me off without a second thought." He sighed, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" I asked, unable to hide the frustration in my voice from proving you wrong, from showing you that I could do more than you ever gave me credit for. He turned to face me, his expression earnest for the first time in years, from failing. He admitted this business. "It's brutal." "Scarlett, I didn't think you had the what?" I interrupted. "The guts, the brains, the drive. What exactly did you think I lacked?" His silence was telling, and for a moment I felt the sting of old wounds reopening, but then he shook his head. "I was wrong." He said simply, "I see that now tonight." Made it impossible to deny. Couple of days later, my dad requested a meeting at my office. He showed up precisely on time, wearing his usual sharp suit and carrying a briefcase that somehow made him look even more imposing. Sophia was already waiting in the conference room when he arrived, poised and unflappable. As always, I joined them feeling a mix of curiosity and inevitability about whatever he was about to propose. He wasted no time getting to the point. "Scarlett Sophia." He began opening his briefcase and sliding a folder across the table. "I've spoken with the board and we're prepared to make an offer to acquire Tran & Partners. We believe your expertise and vision would be an invaluable addition to Greer Enterprises." Sophia raised an eyebrow, her expression cool as she glanced at me before responding. "That's a generous offer, Mr. Greer," she said diplomatically, "but I think Scarlett should have the first word on this." My dad looked at me expectantly, his confidence barely masking the uncertainty beneath it. I didn't even need to open the folder to know my answer. I leaned back in my chair, meeting his gaze directly. "No," I said simply, his brows furrowed, clearly not expecting such an immediate and decisive response. "Scarlett, at least consider." "No," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I've worked too hard to build something that's mine. I won't give up my freedom to return to a company where I was dismissed and overlooked for years. I'm free now, Dad, and I'm staying that way." The silence that followed was heavy, but I didn't regret my words. Sophia offered a faint, silent smile of support while my dad looked bewildered for once. He couldn't argue, deny my success, or buy my respect. Finally, he nodded, closed the folder, and stood up. "I underestimated you, Scarlett," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I won't make that mistake again." As he left, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I no longer needed his validation. I had built my own path, my own success, and I was finally free to walk it without looking back. Hey there, did you like the story? If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, and make sure you won't miss out on more great stories we share here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.